A mere word, spoken with contempt, sufficed. In the chill, luxurious hush of a first-class lounge, a billionaire's callous jest rang out above the loudest bellow. She was an accessory to him, a piece of baggage to be shown off, a symbol of his authority. But he had forgotten one essential detail. Baggage can be abandoned. She was now going to prove to him just how and exactly where. And the world was going to see. Her existence was a world of gleaming marble and whispered words, a gilded cage constructed using infinite zeros. She had exchanged a life of ordinary, mundane pleasures for a world in which every movement was a conscious demonstration of power, and every step was monitored. She had learned to endure the whispers and the furtive glances, to laugh politely when his friends made jokes about trophy wives. She was an adept at silent suffering. A new type of silence she learned to live with. The flight day was to be a victory. A transatlantic flight on a private aircraft, proof of his success. But for her, it was merely another act she had to act out. As they navigated through the airport, he strode ahead, a giant buffer of oblivion between her and everyone else. She was his shadow, his accessory, until his eyes landed on a young, everyday couple walking together, holding hands. The way he gazed at them, the faint smile upon his lips. It was a look she recognized all too well. It was a glance that threatened to make their humble happiness an instrument of war. And she knew, in a flash of cold awareness, that this time around she would not belong to him. The slight smile on his lips curled into a biting comment, a word directed at her but thrown loud enough for all to catch. He turned, his eyes scanning the lounge as if making sure there was no audience, before focusing on her with a predator's calm. He inclined his head toward her tiny carry-on bag, then toward her, a silent gesture followed by a crisp, venomous word. Baggage. The spare elegance of the lounge suddenly seemed claustrophobic. Her universe shrunk to the beat of her own heart. The handful of people around her looked up, their civil faces immediately averting themselves, a covert rule of not meddling. The atmosphere became choked with hidden pity and shame. He observed her, a victorious spark in his gaze, relishing the act, relishing her rigid immobility. He had counted on her to shrivel. He had contrived for her to feel small and compliant, as she always had. But something within her had finally broken. A wire stretched tight for a lifetime had just been cut. She felt the eyes of the room not as a source of shame, but as witness. She saw his sneer, his anticipation of triumph, and in that moment she made a decision. She stepped back once, her back rigid, not in defiance, but in deep quiet. She stood his triumphant glare not in tears, but with an unaccustomed quiet dignity he had never witnessed. He went to take her arm, a reflex action springing from control, but she was already turning away, her movements fluid and sure. He stood there, amazed, as she just started to walk. She didn't run. She didn't glance back. She simply walked. Each step was a declaration. Beyond the quiet murmurs, beyond the dropped eyes. She marched towards the long, silvery hall which led to the boarding private gates, his words suspended like a specter in the air. He stood rooted, his expression a mask of shock as she walked towards the first-class plane, the emblem of his authority, her each step moving her further and further away from him. She was getting on. But he wasn't. He had told her she was baggage, and she was about to demonstrate to him that certain things, once abandoned, are lost forever. Her pace was not quick, but it was unrelenting. Each movement was a gesture of silent rebellion, a witness to a lifetime's pent-up strength. The gate agent glanced up, a curious, silent observer of the tableau behind her, and she passed by, a spirit in her own world at last assuming flesh. She caught the chill of the jet bridge, a cold peace after the tempest, and she did not glance back, not once. He stood there, his own face a mask of shock. The sneer was gone, replaced by quivering anger that he had never publicly displayed. His hands curled into fists, his knuckles white. His gleaming, perfect world was disintegrating before everyone's eyes. He wanted to scream, to run away, to drag her back, but the sheer impossibility of the situation locked him in place. He, the owner of all things, was being left behind by someone he had just referred to as baggage. The irony was a tangible pressure on his chest. She walked out to the end of the jet bridge. She could see the open door to the private plane, a silent invitation to a new existence. She got in. The flight attendant smiled, a courteous, practiced motion, and then extended her hand towards the door, a final, decisive click, the hiss of the seal. It was the noise of a door closing, not merely on a plane, but on a lifetime of gentle submission. He had teased her, belittled her, and in his triumph he had won nothing. He stood alone, a monument to a pride that had just lost him everything, while she flew finally, really, away. The aircraft climbed, the realm of cold marble and silenced insults growing smaller beneath her like a lost recollection. She was breathing air for the first time in a long time that seemed uniquely hers. There was no victory in her chest, no bitter triumph, but rather an intense, freeing quiet. She wasn't enraged. She was free. Her tale was not one of a billionaire's cruelty, but of a quiet, daily injustice that occurs every day. It was about the manner in which people were treated as accessories, as objects of convenience, as baggage to be displayed and discarded when no longer useful. It was about the grinding, soul-destroying load of being less than human, even in a gilded cage. She wasn't fleeing on a plane. She was flying on a plane. Her journey was an affirmation that you can walk away from a life constructed on another man's terms. And in walking away, you can reclaim yours. She sat there, a woman who was free at last, a human being who had elected her dignity over his dollar. Her stride was more than stepping away from a man. It was a bold step towards a world where her humanity was able to spread its wings. The question is, how many more need to step away before the world notices the burden of the baggage we are requested to bear?